So as we're talking about templates, just keep that in mind that if you have something that you're fighting all the time, you're just really needing to deal with all the time, make a purpose to change that in your template file. And again, if you're not quite sure how to change that, reach out to us in support and we can help direct you to the right place. Second question when it comes to templates, in this idea of like, how do I take care of it is if there's anything else, and this is maybe a slightly less template oriented, but still maybe a question to ask, if there's something that just feels like busy work, it's just like as you're working on a project, it's like, I have to do this, and it's like 13 clicks in order to make this happen on every single job or on like every single page. If there's stuff that just feels like that, that would be another hint that there's maybe an opportunity there to automate some of that, to put some of that into, maybe it's a kit, maybe it's a preset, maybe it's just a different workflow. So again, ask those two questions when, especially as you think about your template. What am I doing repeatedly that feels like I'm doing this all the time and I shouldn't? And what's this just feels like busy work, extra stuff that I don't need to be doing. So, and that might direct you to some areas that you might actually make some changes in your template file. Okay, so with that, that's some thoughts on templates, but I'm going to jump over into reports now. Lots of different styles and things that are available in the concept of reports and things that you can do. Some that are more obvious, some that are maybe a little bit less obvious. Try to breeze over several of those here. The main takeaway when it comes to reports is the general design of reports in pre-built ML is that regardless of the style of report that you pick, you are going to get the same quantities and the same output. The goal is really that you would be able to slice and dice and view the material in a little bit different way. Now, there are a few exceptions to that statement that you can control, but just overall, that's the idea is that you can see the same materials just in a different way. There's three main styles as you come into like either editing a report or looking at creating your own up here in the upper left-hand corner. Three main styles of reports that you're going to see: itemized, condensed, and direct ship. There's a couple of oddball ones down here. These don't really get used much. There are some interesting side edge cases that you might find interesting here. You can explore those on your own. But itemized, condensed, and direct ship list. When it comes to itemized, the big deal there, as far as the differentiating factors between all these three, itemized has two things. One, it organizes things by the pack, you can see here, and then it cross-references them by the application. So this is the most granular look at an output from your project. So look for that if you want the most detailed look. Condensed follows in a very similar format. Big difference there, though, is that we have now dropped the application. So anything, it doesn't matter how the 2x4, the 2x6, the 4x8 was used. If it was a beam, a stud, a joist, a header, it just kind of rolls together. But it does still stay within that same pack or collection. Shipping list is kind of maybe how you might think of this, as far as, you want to go load out the main floor pack. And then the direct ship list. Uh, Coming in here, now you can see we've dropped not only the applications over here, but also the packs over here. So this is just a shipping, or just a list all the way across the products, all the way across the project. So we've got that. So in that case, we have those very different variations. You can build your own reports when it comes to that. You can come over here to the plus button and add in those different styles. So, pick what, as far as the starting place, what base style report you want. QL and cut logic is another choice that you can make that is a fairly big distinction. Big difference, what is going on between those two is when you have an itemized list, it is just that. It's basically everything is itemized out. And the big place where this is notably different is going to be in your lumber and engineered wood, where those things come in different stocking lengths, right? So you have a 10 footer, an 8 footer, a 14 footer, a 16 footer, a 12 footer, that all of those individual items get onto a single line in the report. Unlike where you have a QL type report, where we come down here, say, to the headers for the project, into like main wall, where are we? Right here. Here is a header list right here. So we have 100 linear feet of header, and these are the specific lengths that are being set out. So it's a little bit more condensed, simplified version of this. So you don't have like a gazillion lines for all the different lengths, but you can still see the cut list or the quantity length list that's involved. I shouldn't say cut list because that's something else. Quantity length list. Now, with that also, you can also have something with the cut logic report. So that what we were just looking at there with the headers, where we just saw the quantity length list. So now we're adding a little bit more detail there of if you want to communicate further on in the process of like, oh, how are we supposed to use those 12 footers, 10 footers, and 8 footers that were for that header material? This actually will give you the breakdown and say, well, the 12s need to generally go into a 5s and 7s, and one of them is supposed to be a 5 and a 6, and so on. So you give that information. Now, that also can actually be very effective, even more effective, that information communicated on a framing layout and display the cut logic as well as a visualization of where everything goes, but that's kind of a different story. But that's what cut logic is. It's showing you the logic behind of, how is it that we optimized that material. Couple now, so that's kind of the broader look at some of those things. I'm gonna then looking into some of the specifics. Now, here is one of the exceptions that I mentioned before. Use zero waste factor. So I'm gonna look at a QL report here real quick, and let's just take a look at our wall plate here. Wall plate right here is my interior plate. I have 266 linear feet of 2x4 wall plate. If I was to come back to this report and say, you know what, I just want to see what this would be like if there weren't any waste factors involved. I'm gonna click OK. I'm going to view this, and that's basically going to take all of like you would expect, all of the waste factors that have been applied. Now, my wall assemblies, I happen to have a whole lot of waste applied to account for different stuff. So here, interior plate, um, we've now dropped back down to 198 linear feet. So, dropped a fair amount off of that interior plate to get to that total amount that's going to be shipped. So if you, for whatever reason, need something like that, where you want to be able to, see what a report is like without waste factors engaged and just sort of the raw values or the raw, what would it be without any extra? That's what that will allow you to do. That's an interesting one. Include notes, whether or not you get that notes page in the front, choosing to have addresses and so on, pretty straightforward. Here's another interesting one that you might leverage with certain customers is the ability to show quantities on the report columns. Typically the way I would talk about this is if you have a new customer to you, somebody who's just, kind of fresh coming into you, and maybe you're a little bit concerned that they're just going to go and shop you down the road at, whatever other store. And so it's like, well, okay, you want to show them that you actually gave them a quote and that you were completing your list, but maybe you also want to not necessarily give away all of your information that you did for your takeoff. So here's the show quantity. We're going to take that off there. Click OK, and I'm going to view this direct ship list report. So here, I can show them very clearly. Here's all the stuff that I called right here, but I don't necessarily tell them how much of it I called, and I can just give them a bottom line number. So if you're wanting a way to, sort of share information, but maybe withhold back some of that, that's another way to do it. All of these reports, like you'd expect, you can export those out to PDF to Excel sheets. If you haven't explored that before, you can do that, a CSV file as well. For those of you who aren't familiar, I'm not going to go into that in depth today, but you can also do it so that you can have your SKUs mapped. So if you're trying to get it into a point of sale export, send it out and then be able to import it into your point of sale and get priced from there. You can do that and have your SKUs associated with that. Reach out to us on support. We can show you some of the steps and the best practices for getting that set up. Not as common a need that we found for most of our users, but there is also the ability in there actually just to price straight out of the software. You can actually integrate your pricing and place your pricing in here so that you can produce a report that actually has the pricing straight on it. So that's just something else to keep in mind there. Now, as we step further down into this area, this is where you might be able to leverage further. If you have multiple lists, maybe especially pushing into more of that commercial space, you have like a building one, building two, building three, or maybe it's like a community where you have two or three different house types and you're going to build one version over here, one version over there, and 5 versions of that over there. If you're wanting to get a report that goes across lists, you can, as long as you're in a condensed list mode. Actually, no, you can actually do this in anything, either itemized, condensed, or direct ship. You can manage your list settings. So you could say, hey, I want to run a report that includes my house and my house two, or my house two, not my house three, and my house four. And turns out that we're going to build house two twice. So I could set that up this way. And I'll give this a name, report. And maybe I'll just pick direct ship just to make it nice and simple. Click OK. And so I've added down here to create a new report. And if I click view, here are all the materials across that entire, all of those. And then you can see across the top, this is house two times two, and house four. So you can build a very customized report. You can add multipliers to the list to ultimately get to the output that you might want. Last area I want to bring your attention to when it comes to reports is this bottom one here, this list comparison. Now, you're going to have to be in a condensed or direct ship mode to be able to use that one effectively. But we can come down here to list comparison. And if you pick that, you've got a few different options. And not necessarily going to step through all the individual steps of how to do this, because depending on what you're trying to do, but here's the context of why you might want to use this. And if any of these things sound interesting to you, reach out to us. We can show you the specific steps. Two big reasons. One is if you're doing a revision type of work. And you want to be able to show to a customer or show to to someone further down the line of like, okay, yeah, we made the changes, we made the revisions, and the price has changed by $10,000 or whatever it is, and they say, well, why did it change that much? It shouldn't have changed that much. You would be able to show them, okay, this is what changed. Here's the change list of what is different between what it was before and what's after. Basically being able to justify this is why it's 10,000 grand more because of all this material right here that's changing as a result. So that would be one reason why this might be interesting to you, is to be able to, as you work on revision projects, show a change list that's happening there. Second reason why you might be interested in this list comparison is if you do anything with uh, track home or just option type buildings that come up. So if you have a plan that's been set up like it can have regular garage or third car garage, and then bonus room and bonus room with third car garage and extended kitchen, and so you've got all, and then elevation A, elevation B, elevation C. And so you've got a whole bunch of variations, and then users can pick and choose, or not users, they're the clients of these. And this is going to be a whole community, and so you have to be able to, there might be 70 different versions of this house that might get built. There are ways then to use various different features in the software to build a file that's, for a plan set that would then allow you to come to it and say, and essentially produce a site-specific model material list. So you could come to it after you've done that estimating work and you've sort of accounted for those various different option types that you might encounter. You'd be able to come and say, okay, now we need to build a site-specific model that's for elevation B, third car garage option with bonus room. And it would do that math for you and combine all those and produce that site-specific model material list. Or in the same context of that saying, similar to what we talked about before, if you had a base model and then you needed to add and subtract lists, that would need to happen in order for those different variations, that's not the right word I want, options to take place, then you could do that. So keep both of those things in mind. And if you, like I said, if any of those sound interesting and you want maybe more of the details of like how would I leverage that specifically, reach out to us that way. So that's kind of a breeze through reports. Hopefully that got into maybe some of the, and I think I'll just say in passing here, this include notes. This is a whole nother feature in and of itself, but it's a really powerful one as it relates to having your notes integrated into your reports. So I really would emphasize if you find yourself, needing to communicate to people further down the line of why you made certain decisions, that's a great way to be able to do that. But again, kind of a whole nother feature. A lot to show you that we can show you there. So, feel free to reach out for us questions there. So hopefully that helps, kind of showing you some different ideas of what you can do with reports. Oh, you know what? Hang on here because I see I'm looking at my list here. There was one other area that I really wanted to show you. So hopefully you have some time and we're going to jump over here to the Publish tab related to reports, Publish. If you are doing, more than 2 jobs a week, in pre-built and outputting them, then you really should be using the Publish tab. The idea of the Publish tab is to streamline your ability to output your reports and the things at the end of a job. So reports, framing layouts, even point of sale exports. The idea with the Publish tab is you would come into your template file and set up once what you are typically outputting. So if it's an itemized QL list and you want it in an Excel sheet form, and then you also want a condensed list and you want that, in something that's going to go, say, into BizTrack. So you have those few different formats, so you could check and uncheck boxes the way that you want them to be and set that up once. And that also includes how the file is named. Maybe you have a special way that you like to name your files. This is, by the way, if you use the F1 help feature, I'm going to hover over this section of the file name and hit F1. And it's going to pull up our Online Learning Center specifically to this article about naming those fields. And these are right here. This is what I want to draw your attention to. Here is the item that you can reference as you build out this section right here. You can reference like a tracking number or a project number, a date, a rev date, a list, and it will give you more information of how you can use those. But the point is, you can leverage this and set up your template file once. So you could set up if your form for always wanting to set up or name your files was essentially the tracking number for the project that you use, and you wanted to call it, IML, and you want to reference the date, if you want to be like the rev date that you produce it. You could set your template file up this way. So then when you actually produce it, it just looks at the project and says, oh, that's this tracking number, and it finds the date, and it does that exactly. So you can the idea is to set this up ahead of time. So this is all just done for you. You can also specify where does it go to? Does it go to the project location? Does it go to a very specific local drive area? Does it export to hub? And that can be at a very broad level, like for everything here, or you can actually very specifically say, hey, this should go to the project location, and this one should go, like for the BizTrack, should go to a different, very specific place that gets picked up that way. So then when you're done with your project, rather than having to go to reports and view this report and then view that report and and do that all individually and name the files and put them where they go and everything else, all you would need to do is when you're done with the project, you jump over to publish, you hit the global publish button, and it just does everything for you. And everything gets pushed out to where it belongs. So if you, like I said, if you're doing more than 2 projects a week, that's definitely then going to be worth your time to just take a little bit, set up your template file so that you can just, as you finish jobs out, just hop over to publish, hit the publish button, and just be through it that much faster. All right. Well, thanks very much for hopping on today. Hopefully that information is helpful. Again, we'll leave the Q&A on here for a little bit longer if you want to chat about anything, or as always, reach out to us with more questions as they come. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk we'll talk to you once more next week for our final session in this winter webinar series.